kind of a big discussion topic today that I've been trying to figure out how to wrap my arms around. And that topic is, what do you guys think of creating homes for 40K players inside of your non 40K game? What does that even mean? Bakunin Observance has just dropped for Infinity the game, and for the sake of argument, let's pretend that Corvus Belli knows exactly what they're doing. And by exactly what they're doing, I mean targeting the 40K player who may like Adeptus Sororitas, Sisters of Battle. Now, there's no way to infer Corvus Belli's real intentions here, but I do think it makes for an interesting discussion. And I do think these examples come up in a lot of different ways in a lot of different games. For those of you who already play Infinity and Malifaux, and you see some of these examples, what do you guys think? Do you guys think that it's noticeable? Do you guys like it? Do you dislike it? Are you actually previous or ex-40K players who have migrated into these games? And if so, did you actually get hooked into these games with those convenient homes? This and more on today's show. Roll that intro. Welcome to Corner Case, the channel for wargamers by wargamers, and you're with me in the hobby corner, your host, your off-brand Urukai, and your best friend, Deck. So Warhammer 40K is by and large, absolutely and undisputedly the largest game within the tabletop wargaming industry. And so creating a convenient home for 40K immigrants does sound like a very smart business decision at face value. You're already asking someone to leave the comfort of the hobby of the game that they know and potentially bring friends. So why not give them as much as possible something convenient and familiar for them to grab onto? But before we go over that, some housekeeping. Some of you might have noticed that we've been forced to upgrade to a better mic recently, and a longtime cornerstone of the channel, Mikey, made the suggestion that we impale a tank. So here we are, repulsing and heavy stubbering. Next, thank y'all who supported Basheer's Guns Blazing tabletop RPG Kickstarter. It is now funded. Congratulations to Basheer. Gigantic accomplishment for what is a great game made by a great human. I recently had the great opportunity to play the game. Basheer ran it, and it was so fun. The world was interesting, and the combat system is very unique and cool. And for those of you who have spent a lot of your time in more popular tabletop RPG systems, this combat system will knock your socks off. Super fun. If you're interested in Guns Blazing, description below. Back to the show. So let's talk through some more concrete examples of 40K honeypots. So Bakunin Observance for Infinity the game, which just came out, I think is one of the better examples in almost all of wargaming to discuss what we need to discuss today. For anyone who needs context, Observance is a sub-faction within Infinity the game. It is a pseudo-religious, paramilitary group that their primary objective, or one of their primary objectives, is to combat Aleph. Aleph being kind of the big AI in the sky that controls the majority of data and technology within the human sphere. And Observance sees it as a form of oppressive social control, so they wanna beat it. They don't like it. Now, the trope nuns with guns, as far as I could research, has been around since like World War II, but Games Workshop's Adeptus Sororitas, Sisters of Battle, is by and large what I would consider probably the most popular execution of the trope within the last 2, maybe even 3 decades, and especially undisputably within the wargaming sphere. It's worth noting that Observance has existed within Infinity for a long time, and specifically the nun models, Reverend Moiras and Reverend Custodiers and Healers, have a unique look and have existed for a long time. Don't look really anything like Sisters of Battle besides the nun things. The Habit, I think it's called the Habit. But if we look at the new sculpts, specifically the Reverend Cenobite and the Penitent Observant, I think we have a little bit of meat on the bone to discuss here. On screen here, I have comparing the Reverend Cenobite and Penitent Observant with your standard Sisters of Battle line troops, and especially the Paragon Warsuit, which saw great popularity in the last 2 years since the release. I think we can kind of agree that there are a lot of visual similarities here, but for the sake of our argument, we'll be a little more explicit. So for example, across all of these, we see kind of a armored infantry with the exposed tabard or loincloth, however you'd like to describe that. I think especially the Iron Halo is I feel like Iron Halo is like the ring behind the helmet is like a pretty 40K kind of thing. Then on the Penitent Observant and on the Paragon Warsuit, you kind of have the like exposed baby arms and the exo power arms separate. So I think, just naming off a few, but not all of the similarities here, I think it's easy to say that, there's a little bit of visual rhyming, a little bit of aesthetic overlap. I hope what I'm starting to prove here is that with the aesthetic overlap, someone who enjoys Sisters of Battle for the appearance and the flavor of the army might find that hook in Observance if they were to try Infinity. But there are other reasons, a million reasons why people pick a faction within a war game. But specifically, I've chosen, because there are a million, I've chosen to talk about the narrative component next. So what Games Workshop's Sisters of Battle is like the standing army for the ecclesiarchy. Which, if you don't know what that is, I don't really know what that is either. But the point is, they're fighting for the establishment, for the man. And the reason they were created was basically they were created out of a loophole within the bureaucracy that the ecclesiarchy couldn't have men at arms, or something. So then they created women at arms. Got 'em. Now, if you start to compare that with what we talked about with Observance is very specifically anti-establishment, and it exists within the context of the nomad mothership Bakunin, which is kind of the pinnacle of anarchic society within the world of Infinity, and even within, its faction of nomads. And so within that context, Observance is kind of a strong, independent body. It doesn't serve any governing body. So conceptually, Observance is kind of the opposite of the Sisters of Battle, So I think that's kind of what makes this comparison and contrast interesting. So someone who wanted to get in on another Sisters, a Nuns with Guns army in a different game has kind of the look, but at the end of the day, actually conceptually, they're opposite. And I think that kind of makes it interesting. But, what do you guys think? Do you guys think that a 40K player who played Sisters of Battle would like Observance? Are you actually that person? Do you actually think that it's cool? Do you think it's not cool? Leave your comments below. I want to know from you guys, what's most important, and if this was intended as a hook, which we will not infer the intent, if it was intended as a hook, do you think it's successful? To create another point on this line to prove what I'm seeing here, or create the pattern, is we'll take an example from Malifaux. So the Bayou, formerly known as Gremlins, are a faction within Malifaux that are these irreverent, green-skinned people who live on the outskirts of the city. Now, I would make the argument that Gremlins are kind of like Malifaux's orcs. I kind of have the idea that whoever designed the Gremlin faction into Malifaux in the first place is probably an orc player, or that's kind of how I like to imagine it, And while the Bayou or the Gremlins aren't this violent, warring race, they do, I think, actually hit. They tug on the same heartstring that I think make orcs appealing to people. That is, orcs are irreverent and fun, and they have unique cultures and unique ways of speaking. They ride squigs, and red makes them go fast, and the magic and technology just like works because they believe it does. And some of the best hobby projects that I've seen from 40K players on the table or online have been from orky people. And the Bayou like kind of feel like that. Like even if you don't consider the green skin of them, you know, they're irreverent and they're fun and they have some magic to them and they have a distinct culture. They kind of take the irreverence of orcs and like dial it up to 11. Like they don't ride squigs, but they ride roosters and pigs, and they catapult pigs, and Zip throws pianos, and there's no piano marker model, but the Malifaux community loves making the little piano markers. And Ophelia is kind of, and her crew are all kind of like a meme, like kind of a parody of another master within the game, Perdita. They have like the exact same kind of team composition, and they're shooters. And Ophelia even has an ability, and her crew has an ability. The bigger they are, so they get buffs to shooting bigger models. So whether it's intentional or not, I really feel like the Bayou kind of like strike the same chord deep down as orcs do, within people, minus the warring violence and stuff, but like the fun part and like why you want to play orcs, because it represents like tabletop is a fun thing to do and it's not like super try hard, But what do you guys think? Do you think like Bayou is a good hook for orc players within Malifaux? If you didn't know that before and you were thinking about Malifaux, you're a 40K player, do you think it would be a good hook for you? Do you guys not think it's a good hook? Do you guys think it's like I'm totally off base? Let me know in the comments. So many factors go into choosing your faction within a war game. I couldn't go over all of them. For example, I couldn't go over gameplay. I thought that was kind of a hairy topic. Like when someone's explaining to you how a faction plays in a game you've never played before, it's like really abstract and it's not necessarily like something you can comprehend. And when you finally try it, it might actually feel different than you expected. So I did not go over gameplay as an example. But I still think this is an interesting topic, and there's so many other examples. And I want to know really what you guys think, because this is like kind of a big topic, and I think people out there who are making their own games, do kind of want to know this. And without the sales data, to support our little hypothesis here, I think the best we can get to is us like kind of qualitative experience, discussing what we feel about it. So do you like these 40K honeypots? Do you not like these 40K honeypots? Are you someone who is 40K honeypotted into another game? Let us know. And before we blast off into the money zone, we just want to thank you all for participating in the channel once again, watching this video. Please consider liking, leaving a comment below, again, with all your thoughts, subscribing, check the Discord, check the Patreon, and we'll see you next time. I'd like to extend a big corner case thank you to all of our supporters on Patreon. You are what make this channel possible. And an extended thank you to everyone who supports the channel in non-monetary ways. Building community is absolutely the best part of the hobby. Back to the show.
I am ready to subscribe again.